It's the last quarterfinals here for the Hearthstone Masters Tour Montreal Online, as we are heading into the semifinals pretty soon, but not before Frodan and Sato cast some Priest Mirrors, cast some Turtle Mage. It's the rite of passage for most casters in this metagame. Truly puts hair on your chest. Sato, how you doing? How was your little break there?
It was great. It was a very extended break as you and Derek bore the brunt of the brutally long series there towards the end. But I'm hoping now, Dan, like we're going into our fourth quarterfinal of the day, and if I'm going to be perfectly honest, I've been pretty disappointed with the standard of play that I've seen up to this point from the first three quarterfinals. Obviously, this is these players' opportunity to make a legacy for themselves, right? Particularly if they're going to become Grandmasters. They want a legacy to be built on, so we have some excitement around them when they come into Grandmasters. And right now, it does feel like perhaps some of these players are creating the wrong kind of legacy. So I hope now in our final quarterfinal, we get things cleaned up and we actually have a classic on the boards here and we get to see some high-level play.
Yeah, perhaps it's some motivation for the players to, kick it up a notch, because mistakes happen, right? We've seen some of the greatest players ever do it in Hearthstone make some pretty bad plays, but we'll see. Dreivo, a player who represents Bastia Esports for the football club, pretty cool. He's qualified for all 9 Masters Tour, and of course a shout out to his comeback streak when he started 0-2 during the Asia Pacific Masters Tour previously, and then end up rattling off 7 in a row. And if you need a little bit more reasons to understand why Dreivo might be a player worth watching, is the teammates are definitely some notable players who are also on the outside looking to push in to the Grandmaster system. Have you have any comments or notes on Dreivo's play throughout the weekend, even though we've seen him a couple times on broadcast?
No, I've seen him play once or twice, just honestly like against other streamers on ladder at a fairly high legend, and he seems like a very competent player. He does have a bit of a legacy behind him, and he's got a pretty strong practice group of players around him there as well. So I'm hoping we're going to see some good things from him. He is rocking that Turtle Mage that we did just see in the previous series, have that massively elongated game against the Warrior. So hoping we can see some good things from that. But I do believe we are going to be kicking things off with the Priests here, which Dreivo is going with the Highlander Priest, which, as I discussed in our previous series, is just starting to fall a little bit out of favor, but I think does still have some pretty decent leverageable advantages in the mirror.
Yeah, very much so. So we'll talk about that as we get into our first game, which I believe is Priest versus Priest. Warrior and Druid banned on both sides, which I guess makes kind of sense given the differences in their lineups as we get ready. Remember, the winner of this will go on to play the winner of the previous series in Dreadeye and have an opportunity to potentially win it all and join Leda as a player that is likely to get promoted for Grandmasters. We shall see. Priest Mirrors, it's been a hot minute, Saddle, since earlier today. Any thoughts as we go into this game?
Yeah, I mean, I really have to echo a lot of the things from our opening Priest Mirror of the day, where it's Highlander on one side and it is Control Priest on the other side. No Galakron on this occasion for Cagnetta, which does leverage the dynamic even further in the degree I talked about before, where it's the 2-of deck that's trying to be a bit more aggro and trying to play a bit more for tempo and trying to get an advantage through the early game by curving out and pushing some early damage. Because if it comes to a value battle, unless you're able to, for example, Murazond your opponent's Galakron, it's going to be very, very hard to keep up on long-term value unless you can get some serious value chains out of the likes of Kobold Spellkin, for example, that you play in the 2-ofs version of the deck. So it'll be interesting to see how this one pans out.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting when you consider the fact that Control Priest isn't usually in that spot that wants to be super proactive. There's been some matchups in the past for a controlling Priest style to want to do that. I think Freeze Mage comes to mind. Like when you ever played against it, you really want to try against the board as quickly as you could possibly, get your minions out to try to challenge your opponent. But in this case, we'll see if he's able to even mount a meaningful offensive, because Dreivo does have some pretty good removal tools in the form of Soul Mirror, and even has cards like Kronk to maybe summon the Galakron a little bit earlier. But it is interesting, that dynamic that you bring up, which is like, can Dreivo scout the hand with Madame Lazul and feel that he has enough confidence to do something like that? And can Yetta either pressure or find that value to strike right back?
Mindflayer Kaj is honestly one of the strongest cards you can have in the early game as the Highlander variation of the deck, because it's a card that when played on 3 will almost always put your opponent on the back foot, unless they're playing the most aggressive of decks against you. It's a very hard position to gain tempo against a Mindflayer Kaj, as you see here from Cagnetta, just matching the play. But this is not really achieving what I said that he needs to necessarily do in the early game, which is pull himself significantly ahead on tempo. And he might be instead trying to leverage this first dragon discount that's going to come into play next turn, possibly try and pull ahead on tempo from there.
I wonder.
Yeah, and Dreivo has some ways to kind of fight back and manipulate it with Shadow Madness and Penance, but doesn't seem particularly clean in doing so. Start off with the Shadow Madness and using the Broom to commit to it and steal the Mind Flayer card, which of course will summon itself. So, some combat tricks to manipulate and get tempo on his side, which is interesting, right? Seeing this tempo going so much the other direction at the moment.
Absolutely. This is just an ugly board state now to be faced. Cagnetta. Various combinations of Holy Smite and pulls from Cleric of Scales can actually start to fight back against this, but you might just have to over-contest with a bigger minion here and try and move forward.
Yeah, I mean, Big Ol' Whelp is, pretty dominant on the board. It's a little bit harder for Dreivo to remove, with to commit both of his Mind Flayers in order to do so. Cobalt Spellkin puts, spells in your hand to potentially make Wild Pyromancer even better and help you plan out turn 5. Perhaps going for a swing turn that you're so desiring. So I'm looking at either of those dragons right now that have a pretty significant impact.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you don't necessarily need 5 damage to fight for the board, but it's a question of what your opponent's next play is going to be and whether you need 5 damage to be able to contest with that. And there's also just putting the more threatening minion in play, so Dreivo is more incentivized to potentially double trade into it. But then I think the most important aspect there is just the card draw. You see, just adding a Cabal Acolyte to his hand now suddenly feels like Cagnetta actually has some plays to fight back now, which I think he was noticing his hand really didn't have a great quantity of outside of the potential of a Pyromancer clear, which is kind of spotty at best against Priest, right? The Pyromancer is not in your deck to be clearing boards in the Priest mirror, I would say.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, as it does seem like Dreivo right now is going to be favoring the same kind of concept, which is looking at that Cabal Acolyte, trying to see if he can play around it, trying to see if he can get value himself later on. But I would definitely prefer to be in Dreivo's position, as he is the one in the driver's seat. Kind of thinking about if he wanted to, how he actually wants to go about with the remainder of his turn. If he wants to trade into the Big Ol' Whelp, or potentially fight for tempo by using Penance.
Yeah, I still like seeing the Penance here. It's a pretty tempo-based matchup overall, so I would still tend to stick to the idea of spending your mana wherever possible. And again, I think if the Highlander Priest can get this far ahead on tempo this early in the game in this matchup against the Control Priest, it's a pretty commanding position to be in. It's weirdly flipped, the dynamic right now, because Dreivo's hand is actually a little bit low on value. Does have the Illucia, which maybe can set off some fireworks, as we saw in our first series of the day. But right now, it's actually the Highlander Priest that is in the aggro position in the mirror match, which is a little bit counterintuitive.
Yeah, and I do like the trade as well with the specific Mind Flayer, because he wants to make sure that if Cagnetta does end up stealing with Cabal Acolyte, that it's not stealing anything that's going to be difficult for him to remove as well. So this is definitely some good stuff coming up in this early game here. Cagnetta has the Wild Pyromancer for the clear. Can target the Pyromancer itself to revive it.
Yeah, this doesn't really protect his Sethic particularly well, but it is maximum tempo on this turn to have the 3-1 being immediately revived, so it seems very, very reasonable.
Yeah, and that's okay, because if the Septic Veil Weaver got stolen, it's at its weakest state possible, which is a 2-1. So you could just theoretically sweep it up or just trade into it if you need to.
Now, cagnetta gets a full turn of Sethic Veilweaver here, which is something I did talk about before in the first series, is a potential advantage of the Control Priest version of the deck, is that you do have these 2-ofs to be able to do this a lot more consistently, and threatening an insane chain of both value and tempo from Sethic Veilweaver plus a bunch of buffs can be extremely powerful.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking about what's the best overall use case spell, and I guess Renew is pretty solid just to give you more answers, but it doesn't solve the issue that you described, which is none of these really generate significant amounts of tempo to have board presence. So this is still going to be a problem. And that's maybe where the Powered Fusion here can really kick in, and maybe the Renew can heal it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the thinking behind the Renew, is this does actually convert into quite a lot of tempo here, as he's able to get a buff and a big value trade, get his Sethic into that perfect 4-attack zone where it's really, really difficult to remove, and now try and move forward from here. He knows that the Galakron is in hand from the opponent, so keeping a second minion alive here was huge. Dreivo just going to swing the 50-50, and he might just be in trouble now. That's the bad one if you're a Dreivo fan.
Right. So cagnetta now has opportunity to collect a lot of value. Not nearly as much as what Galakron can do with 19 cards remaining in Dreivo's deck, but at least some to potentially drive his advantage even further ahead. Ooh, okay.
Renew again.
Another Renew.
Yep.
He would be at full cards, but does have enough to play after. Okay, I don't... How much does a second Soul Mirror really mean? Is it like... Let me revise that question. How much does the third Soul Mirror really mean in a matchup like that?
So, as you know, I'm sure, Dan, myself and Raven have cast quite a few Priest Mirrors in our time. And he has asked me this question in the past, and I've gone with the response of, I don't think I've ever seen a Soul Mirror in the Priest Mirror and not picked it. We might just be getting to the point of proving that there is such thing as too many Soul Mirrors. I'm not sure if that point has ever been achieved just yet, but we might just be getting there.
That's right. Welcome to Cagnetta's House of Mirrors.
Yeah.
Just constantly summons whatever you play right back, and you're never really going to be able to get ahead on board significantly unless you're willing to play some awkward board states. But for Dreivo's perspective, how does he even answer this right now? There's no direct removal. Oh, wait. Does he have a way to manipulate his life total here?
That's a Gandling. Oh, that's a Brittle Bow. Just going to go ahead and draw.
I guess I must have been a little bit ahead of you. Interesting.
Now the fear does come in for cagnetta a little bit, though, because now he knows that Plague of Death is possible. Basically, all of the big power plays are now available for Priest once they hit 9 mana, so does need to be a little bit fearful of just how much he's committing here. Spells are largely fine, because obviously every spell he's playing is recycling itself into hand, so there's no real loss in the situation. Insta Shadow Word Pain, by the way.
And that helps with hand space.
It does.
So we just play Radiance at the end? Nice juggle.
I like it.
And looks like a pretty meaningful offensive here from cagnetta. This is not really as slow of a Priest Mirror as you come to expect in terms of the amount of aggression coming out from cagnetta, but Dreivo does have the answer finally with Plague of Death. And not a lot of proactivity from cagnetta available this turn. He's got a couple of minions.
I think he just ripped the mass res in response, right? Like, it's likely to be fairly underwhelming. Obviously, largely the minions that you've had die this game have been fairly small and unassuming, but you need some kind of redevelopment here, and playing the Spellkin gives you some pretty serious hand size issues again. Yeah, I like this.
Yeah. Not the best.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so much so that Dreivo probably doesn't feel truly threatened by it. He's hovering over his Dragon Queen, ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're Dreivo here, you definitely want to take the opportunity to just swing a counter-offensive. Absolutely on board with this. Sethic value is kind of already done at this point. Oh, here we are again for Cagnetta, just right back where he was a few turns ago. Sethic Veilweaver value train still well and truly pulling out of the station. Might just feel like he can just dump a Soul Mirror here since he has so many of them.
I must consider.
Whoa, what is happening here, Dan? I'm scared.
Double Veilweaver. With the Shadow Word Death.
Okay.
He really wants to find more value.
I mean, I feel like this is a pretty value-packed hand already. We might be better served just getting some of this value out of our hand as opposed to getting more value into it.
I'm down. You could also use the initiation right now. On the big ol' whelp.
Yeah. It's a one-way train to overdraw City, but it's still a pretty high-tempo play this turn.
And also pushing damage.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So Dreivo can respond. He has actually a really interesting guarantee clear in the form of Uranus and Soul Mirror. Is there a better way to do it besides that, though? Not guaranteed. Renew would have to pull something.
Yeah, you could potentially go fishing with Renew first because it could still change the turn, and you can potentially still then shift to this afterwards, but Dreivo's just going to take the guaranteed line because it leaves him the mana at the end for the extra ooze. Drop a Bloodfem Raptor alongside all of this.
Right.
Reasonable.
Also, I think Renew is really important for his Brittlebone Destroyer later, so perhaps just saving that as a opportunity to guarantee single target removal if Cagnetta somehow produced a really big threat right now.
Yeah, that is a really good point.
I wonder.
This is why I was a little confused on the insistence on value on the previous turn. He did end up with double Dark Prophecy, which actually works out pretty well because they're one of the best priest generated spells that you can just dump. Don't refresh themselves in their hand. They don't give you more value. They're not a situational removal card. It's just a reasonably proactive minion that you can play in any situation.
Yeah,
and he's getting very, very clogged.
The downside, of course, is all those minions are minions that can get stolen. So,
that's true.
It is a little awkward when you're like, oh, Loot Hoarder's even more value. And you're like, well, they probably can steal it. Then you're like, well, I can steal it back. And that just kind of creates a dynamic where I'm not sure if Cagnetta is super interested in. So I ends up going with the Frostwolf Grunt instead.
This gives Dreivo some really nice tempo swing availabilities, like Spellkin, Cabal Acolyte, play any of your then 3 1-mana spells, whichever one is most appropriate for a full board clear. And stealing the 2/5 seems very strong. But now, since the Wave of Apathy has been generated, does he want to hold on to the Cabal Acolyte for the big money? Besides, he doesn't.
Yeah. I'm also kind of interested by the lack of hero power coming out from Dreivo. Just wants to take guaranteed tempo every single turn, which makes sense. But he is running a little bit thinner on what he's going to be playing soon. So I kind of like this because then he's not in a position where he constantly is overdrawing or overflooded with resources, and he's trying to maximize his board presence every turn against a deck trying to do the same exact thing against him. Does Cagnetta have any ability to pick this Dragon Queen Alexstrasza? Seems like he is favoring that value.
You can't stop him, Dan. He's going to do it anyway, and I think it's probably right in this situation. He only has 11 cards left, so it's likely to be active very quickly. It's a dynamic that I didn't really touch on yet, but both players kind of initiated a willingness to draw some cards in the early game, which is kind of like a game of chicken in the Priest Mirror. It is very tempo-based, as you were just talking about last turn. Much more tempo-based now than it used to be, but it's still very late-game tempo-based a lot of times. You still do get very close to fatigue most of the time, so a lot of players are still very scared to draw additional cards. But the reason I call it a game of chicken is as soon as one player starts doing it, like Dreivo played his Galakron to draw his Kronks, for example, Cagnetta then felt able to do it himself by playing the Cleric of Scales to fish for spells. So we're in a situation here where both players have kind of pushed through their deck a little bit quicker than you might be used to seeing in a Priest Mirror, but that is because it's so much more tempo-based now than it used to be, with all of these extremely high-value steal effects and tempo swing turns and everything that can come down to just constantly set up these huge boards that are threatening lethal on either side.
Yeah, that makes sense. Murzon.
Nice.
And now can immediately steal the Frostwolf Grunt right back and trade onto the board here. I really like this this Murzon play.
Yeah, love it.
Finds Alex. That's a way that this pace could be accelerated pretty dramatically if he has 15 power on the board next turn.
Yep, completely agree. Basically, any board he makes now is going to be threatening lethal.
Oh wow, Cagnetta, you can just I'm looking at him. He's he has turned into you know, kind of a nervous wreck here on broadcast in terms of just like kind of rocking back and forth, biting his shirt. You can kind of see how much this match might mean to him, as this is a really important moment in this matchup.
Right. Cagnetta still has responses here, though. Still has plenty of those soul mirrors left remaining from early in the game. Having just seen Dreivo's natural copy of the Murazond come down, he should be a little more willing to be throwing out those soul mirrors. That is one of the dangerous things as well. And chaos initiated, because now one of these two players knows that both players have Mindrender in their hand. And when you know that both of you have Mindrender in your hand, suddenly the plays become very, very interesting, because you know you can always make the play we saw in our early series, where you Mindrender, play a bunch of cards, and then Mindrender right back, so there's no potential punish on the other side. But this now opens up a lot of pretty interesting business for Cagnetta over the following couple of turns.
Well, I mean, if it wasn't chaotic enough, Blood Boil Brute would have a field day on this Wednesday at the moment. This is crazy amount of damage minions. How do you even go about diffusing this minefield of priest minions?
Starting with Renew is intelligent. If nothing is found here, it does at least activate your Brittlebone Destroyer, which can be used on a key target like the 1/7 on the other side, which of course in reality is an 8/7 next turn.
Right.
What about?
Oh no.
Picks the Mind Vision, which...
Oh no, Dan. Next level chaos? Next level chaos?
I mean, I'm anticipating some shenanigans here, because there's some really good stuff from in Cagnetta's hand. Mindrender Illucia, Murzon. Oh! Find another Mindrender!
Okay, now both players know that both players have Mindrender Illucia in their hand.
Well, does Cagnetta know that Dreivo knows? Because if he doesn't know that Dreivo knows, then he could be walking into another Illucia trap.
Oh,
wait!
No, Dad! No!
I don't understand this matchup when it gets to like this point. I've played a handful of them on ladder. I think I played like 3 or 4 of them, and that actually was enough to make me stop wanting to play Priest on ladder, because I just didn't want to get into the situation too much. There's limited time. There's only so many hours in a day, Sottle.
Yeah, you played 3 or 4 Priest Mirrors, and that was what you did with your week. Yeah.
That's right.
You think this is your time?
So I went to Turtle Mage versus Priest to try and map out more scenarios with TJ. Okay, Murazon right back. Mind Vision gets.
It's always.
Another
Don't even
Mind
ask.
Render!
Don't even ask. It was never in doubt.
What?
Never in doubt.
You can't have. I guess. Okay, so Mind Vision just keeps picking up a Mindrender Illucia,
Yes.
and now it's like almost a feedback loop because there's so many copies of in the hand. It's actually more likely than other cards at this point.
Exactly.
Copy off
It's-
Mind Vision.
Yeah, the probability of it happening is actually just increasing exponentially as this goes on. But it's so awkward. Like, both players should now know that they have the ability to end any Illucia turn with their own hand back again and shut things down, right? So
Right.
they have the possibility to make plays with that setup in mind. Make pushes using their opponent's card, but then give them their hand right back, knowing that they don't necessarily have the removal in them. The problem is that both players are now getting to the point where they know both players can do that multiple times in a row because you only consume one Illucia from each hand on any given turn. They can also just bounce back and forward with Illucia like 7 times and see if it breaks the game. Like, I'm down to see that. Like, hands up, anyone?
Okay,
Just
okay. Okay, so Cagnetta knows that Dreivo knows that Cagnetta knows that Dreivo is holding a Mindrender Illucia. Are we caught up on that?
Roughly, yeah. That's about where we are.
Okay, I don't know.
You know what I know, Dan? Twisting Nether. That's what I know.
It ends up being a really effective way to sweep the board clean.
Alright, I feel like we've reset to about 5 turns ago, where now Cagnetta probably has to start with a Dark Prophecy to get out. Okay, he's going. Fine, let's go. Let's do this.
All right, here we go. So now he flips, sees 2 Mind Renders. What do you do now?
It's a great question.
I guess you're like, wait, I had a better hand to develop.
Well, he gets his hand back. That's the point, right? Is that he ends this turn with Mindrender, so he gets his hand back. So all he's doing is just like burning 1 or 2 cards from his opponent's hand here. He doesn't know what he's going to see, but from his perspective, he's just going to play the best 1 or 2 cards that he can for 4 mana, and then swap them. I expect.
Yeah, right. But then Dreivo, what's stopping him from doing the exact same thing right back?
Right. That's where things get messy. Because now we swap back. Dreivo has this turn with his original hand, but he's just seen the multiple Mindrenders in his opponent's hand. So he can now choose to do the same thing. And he also has perfect information because he just saw every single card that was in his opponent's hand because he was just holding it. So he actually gets full info on whether he thinks this is a good idea or not.
Oh, yeah. A ladder tip for all you people who play on PC is I actually screenshot when that ends up happening so I can remember my opponent's hand. You know, the other night I actually watched Inception again, and it's one of my favorite movies because my girlfriend Taylor hadn't seen it yet. So she ended up enjoying it a lot, and I feel like this is reliving that moment where it's so mind-bending that I'm not really sure what to really expect here anymore. Dreivo has so many mind-render opportunities to take back his own hand, which was taken by Cagnetta, in order to play the cards that he wanted to play originally anyways. Because those were his cards. That was stolen by Cagnetta, which was in Dreivo's own hand. If you know what I mean.
Yes. I know exactly what you mean.
Why are we even hiding the cards at this point? I think when you play enough Mindrender Illucias, first of all, there's an achievement should unlock. You should get like 50 gold for that. Then you should just have the ability for both players to just have face-up hands for the rest of the game. Right. Because that's the ultimate importance for a healthy relationship, Sottle. Open communication and no secrets.
Yes. Yeah, I think we could get that printed on a Hearthstone t-shirt as a slogan. The key to a healthy relationship is a face-up hand.
Exactly. Both of you are holding Mindrender Illucia. How about that? Oh no, then it's a Black Mirror episode where you both have access to each other's knowledge and secrets.
So, back in reality, Dreivo only played one Mindrender on his turn.
Yes.
He chose not to flip back, so this means Cagnetta is now playing a turn with his opponent's hand and deck. So, the encouraging thing to do here is just to completely dump the hand. And if I'm going to be honest, I'm not entirely sure why Dreivo chose to do that, because it does seem to give a great deal of initiative over to Cagnetta in this position, to just make this enormous push and just dump a whole bunch of value out of his opponent's hand, creating this position that you see right now.
Yeah, it's a really good point. You know, one of the things that we kind of didn't mention as, you know, I will take responsibility for derailing this broadcast, is that, you know, Cagnetta was the one going first, which means Cagnetta can develop the minions. And if Dreivo responds and there's no reactive cards that can address the board, then Dreivo's just behind development. And now Cagnetta has gotten even further ahead with tempo, and now Dreivo is digging very aggressively to try to find any alternative. Right. But it just seems like he's too far behind with 13 power showing. Cagnetta is just a couple of points off from lethal here.
Yeah, so if I've followed this correctly through trying to politely nod at Dan's TV references, and I have, this was the end of the resolutions. There was no more Mindrenders to go off. So essentially, Dreivo just feels like he's lost the battle of Mindrender mechanics here. He made a play that ended up in this position, and it was kind of provably and demonstrably ending up in this position because both players had perfect information on both hands. So you kind of have to be critical of the situation at a level. You also have to be somewhat forgiving, because who on earth knows how to play these situations correctly? I don't. I just get to sit here and say when something's wrong.
Well, I mean, Cagnetta could have even gone further because he's still holding 2 more additional Mindrenders, so he was ready to go. But I think overall, if you were to point out one thing, it was how Dreivo chose to respond to it, because he played a Mindrender right back and then played Cobalt Spellkin and then was just really not doing much. It felt like he wasn't able to keep up the same pace, and now Cagnetta is so far ahead. We're going to really cement it through a Holy Nova and then push damage, that Dreivo needs to draw something very dramatic in order to win from this position.
Yeah, that was a beast mode Holy Nova. Cagnetta got to push all the damage, take all the value trades, fully restore his own board. Dreivo here is out of Plague of Death. Cagnetta, full knowledge of the hand. He's seen it all. He knows what he has to play around and what he doesn't. Zephyrus gone. Plague of Death gone. Dreivo gone. Cagnetta 1-0 in the series in one of the more chaotic Priest mirrors that I've seen in quite some time.
Yeah, but that was pretty well navigated, all things considering. The Priest matchup can be pretty daunting at times, and it seemed like Cagnetta stuck to the general game plan and was able to really craft an aggressive game plan from the beginning. It kind of got thrown off a little bit because of some of those removal and steal tactics from Dreivo, and then Cagnetta, when given that opportunity with the Mindrender Illucia, took that initiative. And, you know, when we get into those Inception battles where both players are trying to enter the mind of the others, it starts to get really interesting to see how both players respond in that situation, because kind of like what you were saying, Sato, it just gets so weird. A lot of the rules or like traditional ideas of matchups get thrown out the window, and you have perfect information, which sometimes is like the hardest part to deal with because you only have 70 seconds to process everything and try to figure out a good plan from there.
But to follow on the Inception train, I do think Dreivo had to go one level deeper at that point. If someone in our Discord who doesn't have to speak out loud for the next hour and a half, could resolve that down if Dreivo had continued to play Illucias and flip back and forth and let me know what happens, I'm still very, very interested in how that one pans out. But that's the past, Dan, and now we are moving on to the present. Cagnetta, after picking up the first victory, will be moving himself onto his Bomb Warrior now.
All right, so Bomb Warrior featuring Galakrond, the Unbreakable, just to give you that extra push at the top end. Pretty standard at this point. I don't see anything too out of the ordinary in his deck list, as Dreivo's going to stick to his Highlander Priest. And it's a matchup that, Cagnetta probably is more happy to see with Dreivo only having one form of weapon removal. Doesn't seem like... Oh, he has a Cobalt Sticky Finger. Never mind.
He does
Dreivo
have Sticky Finger as
actually
well,
have
yeah.
the double weapon removal. So that's actually annoying for this warrior to have to deal with now.
Yeah, that plus the Zephyrus itself, of course, as well as Mindrender Illucia. I hate to go right back to the well again, but weirdly, Mindrender Illucia can kind of work as weapon destruction because you can play it, steal a Wrench Caliber, you can play it and steal a Horde Pillager. You know, all of these things that would essentially become a weapon for your opponent, steal it away from them. They essentially functions as weapon destruction in that regard as well. But Cagnetta here is playing the Risky Skipper variation of Warrior, which I erroneously said on day 2 seemed to be performing better because we were seeing more and more of it as the days went on. As we were following the higher ranked players in the Swiss, we seem to be seeing more and more Risky Skipper Warrior. But actually, once again, shout out to Wicked Good on Twitter, who runs a fantastic website for keeping up with the stats on these sorts of things. His new stats engine has quite clearly reported that actually the Risky Skipper package has underperformed in this Masters Tour, and it's just kind of a coincidence that we're seeing more of it later on.
Yeah, I mean, if so many people bring it, there's going to be some players who do advance through it, just purely off of, even if they underperform, some of them will be winning still. So Cagnetta, we'll see if it ends up doing enough here. You mentioned stats. Highlander Priest, the worst matchup on paper is Bomb Warrior, which is why when you're bringing this deck in a tournament environment, you either have to account for Warrior by banning it, for example, or you tech against it the way Dreivo has. And those techs are pretty traumatic, right? Cobalt Sticky Finger isn't just, an annoyance. It's really hard for Bomb Warrior to get their game plan going consistently. Because if not, then you're going to follow the traditional 70-30 dynamic that Priest struggles with on ladder.
Absolutely. So just in the early skirmishes, Dreivo's picked him up an Alexstrasza for the hyper late game, which I imagine will be looked at using defensively, but there are also opportunities where Warrior will just ignore your board to be swinging and setting up lethal if they've already dealt with the Apotheosis, for example, that maybe Alexstrasza could be used as a counter-offensive. But I think the most interesting turn is the one that Cagnetta wrote so far, which is playing Armorsmith on 2, because there's kind of 2 schools of thoughts with Armorsmith in this matchup, which is whether to actually get them out early and start maybe getting a little bit of chip damage in with them, and then worst comes to worst, you get them dead before your opponent can steal them from your hand, steal them from your deck, however else Priest can get their hands on it, and so you don't get blown up by the potential of Soul Mirror later in the game. But the other school of thought says that you just don't commit them to the board at all until, for example, you throw them into a brawl or something like that. So you increase your odds of winning a brawl when you need to, but you also just guarantee get your Armorsmith dead before the Priest can really punish you for it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Dreivo with his own Wrench Caliber right back. Gonna hold off, so there's no real target to swing at the moment, which makes a lot of sense here. I wonder if Cagnetta just really wants to capitalize on the fact that he has weapons when he can. You don't always feel like you have that freedom to do so.
Right.
So perhaps maybe, taking advantage of Cutting Class, for example, while you can. Something that I'm thinking about. I think equipping Horde Pillager or playing Horde Pillager to equip Red Caliber again is a little bit on the greedy side, given that your opponent could have Cobalt Sticky Finger and it would destroy your game plan. But he also has a weapon already, so maybe it feels like okay to extend. And the other side of it is, this is the least likely he's going to have Cobalt Sticky Finger, which is the earliest point in the game.
I completely agree, yeah. Just look at the top right. There's 26 cards left in your opponent's deck, right? If one of these cards is Cobalt Sticky Finger, well done. You also saw them mulligan very aggressively, so there's a good chance that the the Sticky Finger is not a kept card here as well. So I'm very much on side with this is the least likely they are to have it this game, school of thought.
And Cagnetta, you can see he's feeling it. Pretty happy to see no Cobalt Sticky Finger. He's in the groove, bopping his head to whatever music tunes that he's vibing off of. It's not entirely clear skies just yet, though, because getting the bombs down is only a piece of the puzzle, but a very important one because it does shut off things like the Highlander cards and just kind of turns Dreivo into a auto-complete deck.
Yeah, not getting your first weapon immediately oozed by Zephyrus is an enormous deal, because it means that that Zephyrus is then inactive as a weapon removal if it gets drawn off any point after that, because they have so many bombs shuffled into their deck. And that opening salvo, like if you play your first weapon and it just gets Zephyrus oozed, and then they have Raise Dead in their deck, in their hand from that point, like, just get out. You can bottom right at that point. Their Raise Dead just automatically rips back the Zephyrus and the Ooze again to just continue to destroy your weapons. Like, that's game over. So the fact that he's got so many bombs loaded into the deck already, he's actually looking in pretty good shape this game.
Yep, can actually kill this Cobalt Spellkin if he desires. I think there's a large incentive to do that right now, given that Cagnetta seems to be on the get him game plan, which I'm down for.
Yeah.
Do not let Highlander Priest get set up, right? Because we know that at its top end, Highlander Priest is one of the more powerful control decks in the entire game, with virtually unlimited resources, crazy amounts of removal, and it just becomes like a really difficult uphill climb at that point. So I definitely appreciate that. It does seem like Dreivo has a renew or two to say about that.
Does indeed. Sequencing there was kind of cool, though, going for the Inner Fire first and then looking for potentially an Apotheosis to be generated off of that. Obviously, you'd love to do it the other way around if possible, but mana complications meant that wasn't possible. But an Apotheosis there still would have been a huge reward being picked up off that initial Inner Fire.
Quickly.
Penance. Yeah, you can see how this game plan has adjusted now. Like, Dreivo's plan A for this matchup is absolutely just destroy all the weapons and shut the game plan down from the Bomb Warrior. But he's now recognizing very quickly that he's failed to do that, so he's switching and adjusting to just full factor healing at this point. Renews go to the face instead of the minions. Healing spells are picked up with the Penance when they're offered, even over some potential tempo options on the other side. Dreivo is in full defense mode right now.
Yeah, but, you know, as we like to often say in Hearthstone, that a good defense is a good offense. Counter pressure is often what you want to be doing as opposed to simply just removing. If you only play defensive strategies against Bomb Warrior, that's actually how you guarantee to die, because you're going to draw the bombs and then you're going to blow up. So Cagnetta,
unless you're Turtle Mage, Dan, as you should have well learned by now. Unless you're Turtle Mage.
Unless you're Turtle Mage, that's right. There are exceptions to all those kinds of rules. Oh, yeah. Well, Cagnetta drawing his own bomb as well, amusingly enough.
Yikes. That's actually pretty unfortunate. He really wanted that shield block shield slam to be usable in combination this turn, and now they emphatically are not.
Right. So instead, do you just kill and move on? Kill this one of these minions? If so, what do you even swing at? Do you swing at the Cobalt Spellkin, or do you swing at the Sethic Veilweaver? Huh.
Wow. I think I would have taken the Sethic there personally, just left the slightly higher damage up on board.
Yeah, I guess I'm just afraid of what Sethic could end up doing, but, you know, perhaps calling out the fact that Highlander Priests have limited amounts of the same cards to target stuff, so the Sethic Veilweaver is less consistent than in other Priest decks, which I think I can get behind.
Right. And now I think Dreivo's smelling a very weak turn from the opponent. Switches a little bit, smells blood, recognizes, as you were saying, that the best defense is a good offense here, and just loads out the Death Rattle minion with the Skystalker. Starts putting on some pressure on the opponent.
I'm thinking about Risky Skipper. Thinking about how we can incorporate that this turn and maybe use Battle Rage to get back some of the resource, because clearly his hand is looking a little bit too awkward and situational with two seemingly dead cards this turn with Wrench Caliber and the Anchor.
Right. Yeah, kind of dead cards with these shield blocks as well. Sorry, shield slams now, but the shield block gets drawn and distracts me from what I was saying. That means he will now be able to get value out of both of them. I do love this, though. Mana spent way too many times, I think both in GM and in this tournament. We've seen people turn down low-value shield slams only to never be able to shield slam again. The situation is a little different because there is both Galakrond and the shield block in hand that you could argue would potentially get high-value shield slams. But I do just like spending the mana there, solving the problem, dealing with a Sethic before any ridiculous apotheosis situations can get generated. I'm just a big fan of spending mana in general, Dan.
I wonder.
Yeah, you know, I think efficiency is ultimately what defines a lot of players from being the best versus people who are like trying to be the best. Like being able to squeeze out just a little bit more every single time is really important. Shield Slam isn't going to be able to kill your opponent's biggest threat. Sometimes it's just an arcade shot. And that's okay.
Right. Oh, Holy Smite. Nutty.
Nice. What does it get? Remember Druid? Not really the high impact spell he was looking for this matchup. But he also has a sticky board, right? This Dragon Ball's not dying anytime soon. Ooh. Or is it?
So Deathwing will take 8 and then be up against a 3-4 on board, right? 5, 7, 8. 12 minus 8. 4. 3-4 on board. Yep, sign me up. Seems good to me.
The question I think would be, how does he use his weapon swing here? Would he want to use it just to ignore the minion? Or does he want to just go upstairs and try to shuffle more bombs in the deck?
It's a good question. Hold is also part of that equation because there is still a remaining Krastanov in his deck, I believe, which obviously hitting Krastanov on this weapon is slightly higher value than hitting it on the smaller wrench caliber that he'll get later because he gets, you know, a higher damage attack extra. But I believe that's the only weapon buff he has left remaining, which I think does incentivize him to swing the weapon. I think if the weapon gets swung, the weapon goes face. Cagnetta agrees.
Yeah, I like it too. It's pretty consistent with the game plan. No bomb being drawn still. I mean, each individual event, it's unlikely to draw the bomb, but when you start pairing them all together, it just starts to become quite interesting to see how long Dreivo can go dodging bombs.
Yeah, I believe currently 6 in the deck, so he's on a 25%er every turn, slightly increasing from this point onwards until he draws one. So he's already dodged, you know, multiple kind of 20% range outcomes up to this point.
Ooh, that Lord Barov. I wonder if that's... I wonder if that's something that Kenya wants to hold on to or kind of play to immediately start to reverse the aggression right back at his opponent. Because, you know, he is at 13, and I don't feel super duper worried, but it is starting to get to the concerning range of life total where I don't want to be leaving up too many more minions on the board. Because Priest does have some ways to leverage that through buffs, and there are some random spells in the hand.
It's true. I do kind of want to get the weapon rolling again here, though, which looks like what Cagnetta might be looking for. Shield Slam, Wrench Caliber, get swinging again. Remember, this one is Corsair cached as well, so he's got a lot of value to chew through here with his additional weapons. He's getting very, very close to the point now where Galakrond can almost guarantee drawing his Blastmaster Boom if he hasn't drawn it already. He does have the Blastmaster Boom Blade Storm combo locked up and ready to go, which is a very big deal.
Oh, okay. Well, Cagnetta does end up having to deal with the fact that there's more Bomb Shuffle in the deck now. We're talking about damage being dished out the opposite direction. How is it that, like, there's 2 or 3 bombs shuffled into Kenya's deck, and yet Dreivo hasn't drawn any when he has 4 times as many?
Yeah. Apologies. It is actually a pretty common dynamic in the matchup that I probably should have mentioned earlier when Dreivo first got his hands on that Corsair cache, is that, of course, one of his weapon destruction tools is just a pirate, so that kind of is a tutor effect that you can throw out at any point in the game when you feel the need to do so, which he absolutely did in that situation, taking away the stolen weapon.
Yes. And now Cagnetta might be in the point of desperation. He's going for Galakrond. Got 14 life, staring at 9. Going upstairs. Which means
up
if he a single bomb wins the game for Dreivo, if he once again finds a way to be drawn the next turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Six more damage going face will put Cagnetta down to 5 here. Cagnetta already shaking his head. He can quite believe the way this is working out. Dreivo's going to go all the way back up to 23 himself, pulling himself out of range of most of the bomb threats, although he has, I believe, now 7 in his own deck without having drawn any. There's that Blastmaster Boom, though. That is infinity damage at this point. And the board clear that he may need.
Yes. With a risky skipper that's also pretty powerful. Does get 1 less bomb versus using Blade Storm, but I think this is fine because he can use the hero power to make up for it. Or
yeah, he does.
Corsair.
He does get to fit in the hero power, which I guess is kind of a big deal here.
Oh no. Okay, we can play the Bloodsail Corsair, destroy the last weapon, kill the Wand Maker, which is mandatory at this point if you want to survive.
Oh, it's so disgusting. Dreivo's had like 7 bombs put in his deck. Cagnetta's had about 2. And only one of them has been under threat of bomb lethal this entire game.
Time is fleeting.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, did I speak too soon? That's 1.
That's 2.
2. Steady on now. Okay.
I mean, expecting more than 2 in a row is a little bit ambitious, but Dreivo
Sorry,
now.
how many potion rolls did you watch happen in a row in the last series, Dan? I can expect whatever I damn well please.
I really hope someone goes back and does the math on how many times Dreadeye played Tortolan Pilgrim and didn't miss on the potion.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, Derek rightfully pointed out that it doesn't truly matter in the big picture of things, but it's definitely one of those interesting statistical anomalies.
Yeah, it mattered for the first few he played, and then as soon as it didn't anymore. It was just funny.
Dreivo does have to clear this board. He does have the nuke button through the Plague of Death, but he's thinking about if there's a better way to go about this. Not to mention... Oh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Listening. Got Lord Barov and Blade Storm. Also, this shuts off the ability for his opponent to use Ankar to get extra damage to push through, so he's at 9 and he knows that there's...
It also gave him the 5 bomb deck, Dan.
Oh, you're right. Although, I feel like it's almost the same percentage both ways at this point. Or
It's very
close to it.
Yeah, 5 is my estimate. I might be 1 or 2 off on that point. Like, if it's 6, that actually probably makes a pretty big difference.
Cagnetta also has Shadow Madness, by the way, to deal damage and potentially give the bomb outright back. If he hero powers, he puts his opponent down to 6. Shadow Madness can also put him down to 3.
Oh, wait, hang on. This is the bug again, right? That isn't even real armor. Is Cagnetta seeing this as well? I don't think that's real armor on the Priest, right? I think he's at 4. I think Shadow Madness is just straight up lethal, is it not?
This is like the visual bug, right? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Let me go back and check.
That could potentially be a disaster in this series for Cagnetta. But I have a suspicion that is not real armor.
Yes, because he played the Galakron and then died to the... Not died, but took a lot of damage from the boom bombs. Yes.
Yeah. Which means just Shadow Madness plus the hero power was lethal on that turn for Cagnetta.
Oh.
Is Cagnetta seeing it? Like, I don't know. I don't know how to call this. I don't know if he's seeing that armor or not.
Right, which Dreivo gave him lethal.
Mm-hmm.
Because Dreivo wasn't...
But Dreivo didn't know what he was doing with his opponent's hand, right? He didn't know he would end that turn with a Lord Barov on the board, for example. But it does mean the play that he made gave his opponent lethal, but not necessarily the Illucia straight up.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And so
Yeah.
I'm not going to ding cagnetta too hard on that mislethal at all. I think that's quite unfortunate, if anything. Because it's not real armor. For people who don't know what we're talking about, there's a bug with when you transform into Galacross. Sometimes it still says you have 5 armor, but it's not possible. And Cagnetta's drawing the bomb. Another bomb!
No, not like this! Not like this! Oh
Exactly
my goodness,
like
Dad!
this. 3 bomb outer. Dreivo steals game number 2 from Cagnetta right under his Jenny Chan Chan. Can you believe that? A tied series going to game number 3 when it looked like the Priest was going to be down and out.
Oh no, Dad. That is the worst possible timeline for the ending of that game. Like, unfortunate visual bugs, potential mislethals, but not really, because we can't even get into the player's situation. We can't even cast any blame in that situation. And then the most ridiculous 3-chain of the bombs at the end from his opponent's deck that had been tossed over to him from the Illucia. That is just very, very unfortunate for Cagnetta. There is no other way around it.
Yeah, super unfortunate, and kind of like what we said, really difficult to ding him on that, just because it fools a lot of players. It fools even us, right? We were talking about it while we were playing ladder games leading up into the day before the broadcast started, talking about the visual bugs. So not going to highlight it too much longer because I think people understand exactly what happened, but that is truly a tragedy in terms of Cagnetta's camp. For Dreivo, perhaps a second chance that he really needed, because being down 0-2 is a world of difference being 1-1 in this best of 5. And now we turn to the Spell Druid for Dreivo.
I just don't know, Dan. I need time to recover from that one. I have nothing for you, but we will try and reset. It is going to be the Druid now going up against the Bomb Warrior. And this can be a pretty problematic matchup, I would say. Any build of the Druid against the Bomb Warrior tends to come down to the wire. And I think this particular build with the Exotic Mount Seller does have the ability to just generate one too many boards for the Warrior to be able to deal with in quick succession.
Yeah, very much so. So here we go. Game number 3. Dreivo has, I believe, double Guardian Animals. Start things off with that Lightning Bloom. So a pretty explosive hand, but would love some ramp to really tie things together and also to avoid drawing those Twilight Runners, because each of them being drawn makes the Guardian Animals less effective.
Cagnetta's hand, though, I christened this the Party Starter.
Yeah.
Wrench Caliber on 4, double upgrade into Boom on curve. Dreivo does miss ramp here and is just a little bit slow. This hand is very capable of just blowing past everything he's capable of doing.
I mean, Dreivo draws beasts 2 out of 3 turns.
Yeah.
Really not what he wants to see at all. Still has 2 Lake Threshers, 2 Teacher's Pet in his deck, so not like his Guardian Animals are going to die after 1 cast. But definitely not the start that he was looking for here. As he sees Wrench Caliber being shuffled into a bomb to his deck, kind of anticipates what's going to happen here. I kind of wonder if Dreivo is just going to go for this Guardian Animals right now.
It's a little ugly. It's Guardian Animals spike once into absolutely nothing next turn, which feels kind of miserable. So almost feel like he needs to break up his curve a little bit here and actually split up the coin and the ramp. Yeah, that's what he's going to do. He's just going to coin the Twilight Runner first to actually give himself a couple of back-to-back plays. Because with this curve, right, he can go coin Twilight Runner here, Bloom Animals the next turn, and then potentially actually have a follow-up play after that, whereas the one-off spike here doesn't really work with his curve.
Yeah, and now kind of what you were alluding to before. The upgrade train finds Corsair Cash followed by 2 weapon draws. Hate to see it.
Sequencing, there might be some questions on ordering there because he drew cards before he played Corsair Cash. Point being, he didn't want to play Corsair Cash this turn. He wanted to draw a Blade Storm and spend 3 mana on Blade Storm this turn to deny the card draw from his opponent. So that's why he chose to do it in that particular order. He wanted that 3 mana available at the end of the turn for Blade Storm if he found it.
Yep, agree. And I think that a little unfortunate, but I don't know if that will be the deciding factor here. Quiet Runner drawing 2 cards is also really nice. Interesting that he chose to... Oh yeah, because he wants to make sure that the beasts don't get drawn. I was thinking about, like, what if he drew something else that would change his play, but of course he already drew enough beasts that he doesn't want to take that risk.
Exactly. Shield Block, Shield Slam, decent response here. He can draw the second upgrade. He could potentially be in business. Does not, though. Second upgrade would have been kind of nutty here. It actually gives him a meaningful swing of his weapon this turn, and then he can just have another swing next turn into the Blastmaster Boom, which does seem pretty powerful.
Hopefully a taunt doesn't pop out of his teacher's pet.
Alright. So now he can still get a nice swing into the Twilight Runner. Knows his opponent is overloaded for this turn, so ideally there isn't too much pressure coming back the other way. But Dreivo did draw that other copy of Innovate, which, as I was saying, by just delaying and breaking up his curve just a little bit, he gave himself a lot of options to be able to keep pressuring smoothly. So now finding that extra draw of the Innovate, he can continue to pressure very heavily this turn by just innovating out another beast. I would be surprised to see him not do it. You might look at it and say, well, you know, he's got a lot of pressure right now. Does he necessarily need to commit more into Brawl? The problem is the opposite. The problem is the Blastmaster Boom. If he undercommits into Blastmaster Boom, that's potentially how he could have a problem.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because Druid does want to build that board, but Blastmaster Boom is kind of threatening for most of what they can develop.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how these boom bots fall here. Cagnetta going ahead and play it on 7. That's usually the power turn you look for with the Bomb Warrior.
It's a real ugly Blastmaster Boom now, though. So much pressure coming back the other way, and the Thresher can cleave 4 damage onto the 7/7 by hitting a 1/1. It's not pretty.
Right, and he can even remove it through Bog Beam. This is definitely a turn where Dreivo has several options at his disposal. Even has another Guardian Animals for the other Lake Thresher. Okay.
Yeah, there was potential for this turn to get pretty interesting, because he could dump cards with the Ironbark and the Bog Beam while cleaving away the Doctor Boom, and then potentially heal back all of the Boombot damage if it's spread around nicely with an overflow. Now, the fact that the first Boombot sniped one of his minions for 4, so there's no healing value to be had, does make life a little bit more interesting here. Okay.
Boombot direct damage.
Yep.
Healing
So it
6.
still ends up being the play. Bog Beam overflow.
Finds a Nubasath. And it's going to be a pretty intimidating board to have to deal with. He finds Lord Baroff, though. No easy, convenient access to 1 damage AoE on this board, though. Lord Baroff transforms all their health to 1. Does he have... I mean, he could go through the hard way as well. He could play Lord Baroff, trade a Boombot, hopefully he kills a minion, uses a Weapon Swing to clean things up.
Right.
Which I don't hate, actually, because it helps get the weapon online and makes things like Dr. Krasnov better next turn, and he has so many weapon charges through the form of the Wrench Caliber, the upgrade, and the Anchor that he kind of needs to get it going. I actually don't even mind him playing Anchor this turn so he can get a risky skipper.
That's kind of what I was leading to as well, is whether that's worth it, and I'm not really sure. Obviously, the best cards with Risky Skipper, I think in this matchup, are Lord Barov and Blastmaster Boom, both of which at this point are kind of gone. So I'm not even sure how much value the Risky Skipper has at this point.
That's fair.
But it was worth considering for sure.
It's true. Maybe he feels like the bomb game plan is just more consistent overall.
Yeah.
Cagnetta not able to get the boom bot to land onto either the minions, so back over to Dreivo, who finds Ysera. Not enough mana to play it just yet, but he could use it if he wants to play the Lightning Bloom this turn.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? He could bloom Ysera here, and then he does have card draw options for the following turn, but I think his hand will be a little bit too full to be going for Overflow. So I suspect this is a turn off here instead to develop something else. Could even potentially be a small Mount Seller turn.
He does have 2 final beasts, I believe, or he actually has 1, right? He has a Lake Thresher still in the deck. I think he's drawn everything else naturally, so the Guardian Animal
sounds right,
not
yeah.
really as impactful. Yeah. That's pretty unfortunate.
My dream is your nightmare.
Interesting. He's still going to go for it here.
I guess maybe his reasoning is that it's going to be harder to play Ysera as the game goes on, especially as more bombs get shuffled in. So
That's fine.
get it out now, and it's also a sturdy minion for a warrior that can't really remove it easily with Lord Barov gone.
Consider this a house call.
Okay, here we go. Bomb shuffled in again. So now it's portals or bombs. Trick or treat has come early. As Dreivo finds Iron Bark. So Mount Seller is still kind of weak in this position, and also Dreivo still has a lot of expensive cards to dump here beforehand.
I wonder.
Precisely, does make that Iron Bark just making a huge taunt this turn is a really big deal, though. Preventing face damage to come through, potentially. Yeah, I like this. Temptation, I guess, to hold it for some Mount Seller synergy, but that's necessary at this point. Just throw out the big taunt, try and protect your face damage. So is it Armorsmith Brawl time? Ooh, interesting.
All right. Okay. How does that
Interesting
change things?
Means he has a guaranteed clear this turn with Brawl Bladestorm, but that is a big double removal commitment into a deck that he knows is full of Dream Portals. He's used a Barov already, which he'd love to still have available to him for the late game Dragonboard scenario. So he might feel like he needs to milk some of this removal just a little bit harder here, but that 4-1 Jungle Panther is so troll right now in terms of setting up anything clean with just a solo Bladestorm clear of any of this.
Right. And you just much rather save Brawl for an actual big Mount Seller board, as you were kind of talking about. So what do we do instead? I feel like if you're Cagnetta, passing here feels like one of the worst things you could be doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Whirlwind?
gonna try and tank to survive, hope some portals get drawn here so he has more value for his Brawl on the following turn. Like, yeah, I think you saw the disappointment there. I think he wanted Dream Portals to be summoned that turn so that he could actually get better value out of this Brawl, and nothing doing so far, but there is still the Twilight Runner attack to come out. That was such a difficult turn. Like, normally when playing Bomb Warrior, or almost any turn, if you give me a full clear plus hit my opponent in the face with the weapon, I'll advocate for that line. But I think Cagnetta's still too far away from straight up lethal to be using his last bomb charge and his last big removal in that situation, right? Like, if he had the other upgrade in his hand and he could clear this board, upgrade, go face, still have a weapon available for the next turn to follow up with another swing, then maybe we could talk. But I think without the guaranteed extra damage, the Brawl was probably a little bit too liberal there. So Cagnetta just scrapping, trying to extend his removal for that little bit longer.
No one. What
can see Dreivo being very careful about how much he extends as well. I like this, holding on to the excess mana. And the Thresher for the guaranteed clear, going face. Not attack with the Twilight Runner.
Actual genius over here.
Yes.
He knows what's up. He understands this situation perfectly. He knows what's going on. He knows Cagnetta wants additional value out of his cards. And Dreivo says, absolutely not, sir. If you want to remove this board, you're going to have to remove this board. I will choose when to summon my next one.
Fantastic read by Dreivo, which, you know, from Cagnetta's perspective, is just even more inconvenient. And now we have entered the stage where once more, you know, Cagnetta is trying to do something, but Dreivo knows, and now Cagnetta knows that Dreivo knows. And so this very sad brawl, how long are we going to hold on to it? How long are we going to refuse to swing with our Wrench Caliber and kind of stall our game plan? And it's difficult because he still has 2 Corsair cash that I don't think he's going to draw anything.
They are not. There goes one bomb, though, and here's the other dynamic, right? Is that even beyond the Dream Portals, Dreivo doesn't want to draw cards because there's bombs in his deck that could just straight up be threatening lethal. He doesn't want extra minions on the board because any extra minion on the board is another minion that can win a brawl and remove the taunt to allow this last weapon swing to go face. Like, there's so many different factors to this idea that Dreivo doesn't want to draw cards right now and Cagnetta does want him to draw cards. That it's almost like it's completely flipping fundamental Hearthstone on its head right now. Both players have the exact opposite motive than you might expect.
Yeah, well, it's looking good for Cagnetta in terms of the bomb being drawn, but not good in terms of the board state. So we might see a really interesting finish once more to this pretty epic back and forth best of 5 here. I feel like there's so many surprises and twists and turns, starting out with the Priest Mirror leading us to this point of the series. Right. And Dreivo, again, with like an unusual line to not draw cards from this deck, not build up the board. The 2 things that Druid does the best on top of gaining mana crystals. And of course, getting friend requests on ladder. Druid's really good at that.
The best, Dan.
Or maybe it's just me. I'm not sure.
It's go time, right? Can you wait any longer from here? I'm not sure you can. I think it's just win a brawl, hit face.
What does it mean to win the brawl?
I mean, win the brawl is the taunt minion is dead, in my mind, at this moment.
Sure. Okay.
You are right to call me out on that, but simply winning the brawl means that you get to hit face. That's all that means here.
Well, yeah, I was thinking like Galakrond after the brawl, if the taunt minion dies, gives him a chance to maybe press in for more damage. But the Ysera survives!
No! Bladestorm has to go down as well. Now the swing goes face.
Here we go.
9 health, 4 hits, down to 5. So many fake cards in the deck that will redraw even if the bomb isn't immediate. And yet a praise. That's a redraw. That's a redraw as well. Why do you tease us like this, Hearthstone? Come on!
After he played his brawl!
Just let us know one way or the other! Boom!
Wow. Oh, wow. That was thoroughly satisfying. That was a good climax. I don't even understand, you know, what the math was behind that, but you know, with all the portals being drawn, which Cagnetta was waiting for the brawl and removal, to which Dreivo was properly not drawing cards in his deck to avoid that scenario, to the fact that all of that was technically not really impacted until Cagnetta's last shuffle, because his last shuffle with the bomb is actually ordered in that specific way. There's just a lot to unpack from that. But at the end of Game 3, Cagnetta is up 2-1.
He is indeed, and I think that was a very nice palate cleanser, because I think that was actually a pretty cool, interesting game of Hearthstone coming right down to the wire between 2 players who actually appeared to be thinking pretty logically about what was going on, which I think is something that we've sorely needed after some of the shenanigans that we've seen today. So long may it continue now, Dan, as Cagnetta finds himself a single game away from a semi-final spot here in the Masters Tour.
Yeah, and theoretically, this, that was a third one game, right, of Cagnetta. But now we go into what could be the fourth as he goes to his mage deck up against Druid. Mage versus Druid has been one of the most popular matchups that we've seen this entire tournament, just in this entire metagame. It seems like two of the defining classes. As we look at their deck list a little bit more in depth, do we notice anything that might help tilt the matchup in either player's favor here? Living Dragon Breath, perhaps, from Dreivo. That's the number one candidate I'm looking at.
That is the number one for sure, because even though it's aimed very firmly at the Turtle Mage first and foremost, there still comes positions where Tempo Mage relies on Ray of Frost or a generated Frost Nova or a generated Blizzard to be able to buy some time against big minions. So certainly the addition of the Living Dragon Breath can come into play here, but it is currently the lowest win rate card in Druid in this tournament, based on the stats put out by Wicked Good earlier, which obviously does make some sense. If you are playing Living Dragon Breath, obviously you are going to lose percentage in the vast majority of matchups, and you're just trying to have a particularly targeted strategy at Mage. So you kind of accept that as a given in this position.
Yep, that's totally fair. And I mean, there's other ways to win besides just freeze tempo plan. You can also just get a bunch of burn damage. You can also get a bunch of generation and win on sheer value. You can also just get them through Mana Giant and Conjurer's Calling, and Druid has a really tough time answering that. And it all kind of is predicated by the pace of the players, right? If Cagnetta gets out really quick, Cramp Session is very nice, and if Dreivo is able to get the ramp.
Go, 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 go. Oh, go, go, go. This is a potential for a real Turbo Mage game here, Dan. Because already, there's no Evocation in hand currently, but there is a One Thief and there is a Magic Trick. And both of those are route to Evocation. There's double Sorcerer's Apprentice Mana Giant in the hand already. This one could get nasty real quick. Spider Tank? Question mark?
Yeah, it's just that it feels like the Living Dragonhawk is so crucial as it stops your minion from being frozen both in the future and the past. If any of them have been frozen, they unlock immediately. But it feels like you gotta hold on to that, and that gives Cagnetta some free reign. These are a lot of cheap spells that can discount Mana Giant to basically being free next turn.
This is absolutely go time, Dan. Cagnetta recognizes its spare Sorcerer's Apprentice in hand. I could not hear the argument for not dropping at least one Apprentice here. He just has to go. Does miss out on Evocation so far, though, but Cram Session is a very nice consolation prize. Lab Partner costs 0 and discounts Mana Giant here. It's getting closer, step by step. Let's keep this sequencing going. Hit the Draconic now. Now the Cram Session. Giant down to 4 already.
All right, well, I think that's all that we can do for now. That's reasonable. Extending Word with Coin doesn't seem like particularly useful. Dreivo finds Speaker.
Yeah, and there is an interesting dilemma now this turn. An interesting dilemma that could have been very easily solved by having a Spider Tank on the board last turn. But here we are, as a Sorcerer's Apprentice that needs to be killed. And fortunately, Speaker Gidra is found to be able to dig Dreivo quite handily out of the situation he found himself.
Right, so what's the best way to diffuse this? You could use just one Ray of Frost, but we know about that's what Living Dragonhawk is trying to do. You can also just try to go digging and kill off the Speaker Gidra. I believe with 2 spell damage, the Ray of Frost would basically get it down to 1, and you can ping it down. That wouldn't.
Right.
I don't think you have enough mana to actually do all that unless you want to commit the coin.
Or the Apprentice, which, again, I'm a very big fan of seeing come down here from Cagnetta. I think this is pretty good matchup understanding.
Yep.
That he has the opportunity to go digging here for Arcane Intellect, potentially, for other options if he wants to throw out the coin with the double spell damage alongside this. 4 damage plus the trade already takes care of this here. You can choose to go coin Arcane Intellect or the One Thief at the end of all of this. Actually, coin's the manager. I know I wasn't accounting for the coin even. This is absolutely true. You can just get an 8/8 in play right now. My apologies.
Right. While Dreivo's overloaded, which is, I think, the thing that puts this play over the top of the others.
He's not overloaded. He's not overloaded this time.
Oh, why did I think that
He used a regular Innovate, and he still has the Lightning Bloom in hand.
okay. Yeah, he still has the Lightning Bloom in hand. For some reason, I thought he had used that Lightning Bloom, but still, Dreivo, even on 5 mana, having trouble dealing with this Man Giant.
Cagnetta's gas does not slow down from here. Has Raz to follow this up, which you saw him kind of in the tank at the end of that turn as to whether to even trade the 1/1 into the remainder of the Gidra, because he just had Raz to clean it up on the following turn anyway, and that incentivizes him to keep his spell damage minion alive. But I think obviously with the threat of Living Dragon Breath being able to come down and potentially make a mess of things, with that Speaker Gidra still alive, he was pretty smart to make the trade, and he is starting to vibe again.
And now the tough decision that Dreivo held on to the Living Dragon Breath for a better situation, ends up just playing the 3/4. And now Cagnetta has full dominion over this board. It doesn't feel like he's going to get stopped. If this Arcane Intellect hits some high power cards from this point on, I'm thinking about just hitting Conjurer's Calling. It could be super devastating. Looks like instead he's just going to favor the tempo. I mean, his opponent's already demonstrated an inability to answer his board. Why not just stack it?
Yeah, absolutely. One big threat, maybe. Maybe a Fated Guardian Animals can deal with that. Multiple big threats spread apart, split up so they can't get cleaved. It's when things start to get a bit more exciting. I guess with double Ray of Frost. Wait, what is happening?
Well played.
I mean, deserved, yes. I would also argue that we could throw out a well played at your sequencing of this Living Dragon Breath, but this is certainly a lot worse, I will confess. What was the plan? I mean, obviously the plan was that wasn't a Living Dragon Breath, but, you know.
Oh, jeez. What a day of Hearthstone.
So the thing is, I'm fairly sure. I didn't want to say this because it doesn't really make that much sense to me that he would have mouthed the cards in English. But it looked like he mouthed Living Dragon Breath to himself last turn when he was making that decision I was talking about. So to then so spectacularly forget what the card does on the very next turn of Hearthstone. What is happening today, Dan?
That's Hearthstone, baby. I mean, that's...
Yes, it is.
That's something that TJ always told me, and I feel like it's appropriate to drop now. Hearthstone's a game where anything can happen, including forgetting 2 minutes later what the card that you so meticulously planned around or was accounting for heading into this game. It's just funny because when players look at lineups, it's open deck list. Players are always thinking, okay, look at its deck list. What card I have to be afraid of? Oh, he has a Living Dragon Breath. Definitely make sure to play around that card, especially if you're playing Mage. And then when push comes to shove, the defining moment, it's your turn up at bat. You've been training for this for months, right? This is an entire sequence. It's not just a one-day sign-up thing. People took months to qualify for Masters Tour Montreal, and then just forget to read it. It's okay. He's won this game. It looks super over, but Jeez, what a hilarious moment that is very humanizing for Cagnetta, as he's gonna be fumbling to the goal line here to win this here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in your head you're like, well, I'm not freezing it, I'm killing it. I'm using my Ray of Frost to like deal damage, but there's a conditional effect on that in the first place, and like, again, I started this out saying that I felt like this has been a pretty disappointing top 8 in terms of level of play. We kind of got that one messy game, which, you know, I don't really want to throw any blame around because I do think there was a visual bug involved that could potentially have confused everyone, and I don't know what the reality was in that situation. But it's not the ending you want. That's not the thing. When you get promoted to being a Grandmaster, potentially, if you then go on and play like the absolute nuts for the rest of this tournament, if you are the best player in the world, and you now prove that for your remaining 2 series and you go on and win the tournament, and you then get promoted to GM, what do you think people are going to remember about you when it then gets to that point, right? Like, you are just creating this idea and this perception of yourself that you'd really love to avoid. Like, these players just have to be doing a little bit better than this in this scenario.
Well, I mean, we have our top 4 going into Masters Tour Montreal, and hey, you know what? At the end of the day, a little bit of column A and column B, right? Cagnetta getting really unfortunate with some circumstances out of his control and circumstances within his control. He even recognized at the moment he jumped out of his seat. I think it would have been absolutely like catastrophic if he didn't even realize what happened afterwards. But rest assured, left before we crown a champion. And that brings us to our next break. So we're going to take a few minutes and get set. And when we come back, the semifinals here for Masters Tour Montreal Online will begin.
Masters Tour Montreal Online is brought to you by T-Mobile. Switch today and rank up to America's largest 5G network. T-Mobile.